This DLC is amazing. If the first and second DLCs for Kakarot were an okay excuse to come back to the game with new moves, new transformations, and a cool boss fight, this one is way more than that. The Future Trunks arc has received CyberConnect 2's full attention and has been retold in the best possible way using Dragon Ball Z Kakarot as a basis. This is more than a few new moves and transformations and a cool boss fight. This is the entire arc retold with fantastic cutscenes, progression, and side missions. And if you liked Kakarot, I cannot recommend this enough. It is definitely worth a purchase. If you didn't like Kakarot, this is not going to change your mind. Let's just get that out of the way. But when you're reviewing DLC, you can't expect a DLC to suddenly just make the game good. Which is why I say this DLC is the best possible thing you could have hoped for. This is fantastic, but let's start from the beginning. You can access this DLC from the add-ons menu just like the previous ones, and you don't need to have finished the story to do it. The progression and resources you have in this DLC are unique to this story, so if you've been grinding outside, you're not suddenly going to be over-leveled and have a ton of resources, which is perhaps for the best because I feel the difficulty curve in this is on par with what Kakarot has been. I had trouble with one boss fight in the entire DLC, mainly because I refused to use healing items because that just dumbs down the game even further. But other than that, not much gave me trouble. You start with Trunks and Gohan in a world that's been destroyed by the androids. This is essentially the same map that you had in Kakarot, but every major city has been destroyed. And the DLC isn't restrained to this area. There are a few that you can jump between, which immediately made it bigger than I expected at the start. These androids are way too strong for Gohan and Trunks at the beginning, so when you encounter them, you're usually trying to escape. The game will give you these winning conditions which seem random, and once you fulfill them, you can escape the fight. There's no winning against the androids, which is a nice contrast to what Kakarot's typically been. You can't just beat them and move on with the story. They're an enemy that you're trying to avoid, and to enhance that sense of danger, the androids have spread a bunch of drones that will alert them to your presence should you fly too close to them. And this new mechanic is as Kakarot as it gets, because on one hand, it's a cool idea that thematically blends the fear of the androids with gameplay, but then in practice what you do to avoid these androids is go into first person and manually aim the key blast shooting them down, which isn't the most fun thing to do. There's a researcher that will sell you some passive buffs if you bring him drone parts as well, so you're encouraged to hunt down these drones, and that kind of defeats the purpose of sneaking and running away from the androids. Anyway, the main story progresses just like the main story progressed in Kakarot's base game. You have your main quests, which consist of training and fighting the androids, paired up with amazing cutscenes not only during fights but during the calmer moments as well, developing the relationship between Gohan and Trunks. And regarding these cutscenes, you guys already know it, but CyberConnect 2 just does not miss, once again animating this entire story beautifully. Even the dialogue between Trunks and Gohan while traveling to your objective can be heartwarming, like this moment where Gohan tells Trunks about his childhood. This DLC doesn't limit itself to recreating moments from the anime, it goes further, and it usually doesn't miss. There's definitely a lot of love for the source material, and you can tell when they explore it in these different ways. For instance, Master Roshi and the gang, they're still here, they're alive. I actually didn't know they survived, but they've been forced to live in this submarine, otherwise the androids would find them. Master Roshi has a lot of side quests in this DLC, and in one of them, for example, he wants to honor Krillin, his dear student who has died defending the Earth from the androids. And this quest develops in some unexpected ways, kinda weird if you ask me, but it's touching and it makes sense in this universe, and Kakarot does that really well, and in this DLC it does it even better. But of course that sounds too good to be true, because it is. Even if the writing is good, these side quests are usually designed terribly. Most of them are fetch quests where you have to farm or find certain items, and they're still designed in a way that has you traveling between areas multiple times during the same mission, which means a ton of loading screens. Now the loading screens aren't as bad as they were back at launch. I remember they patched them. Unfortunately, I'm now on a PS5, so loading times are even smaller. But if you're on a PS4 and you want to do all the side quests, then you better get ready for some painful loading screens, because you gotta travel between areas a lot. In this DLC, you technically get to play as 4 characters, even though they're all Trunks and Gohan. You've got a younger Trunks at first, who then grows up into the character you've played in the base game, and you've got adult Gohan with 2 arms as well as 1 arm only. And even though their movesets are very similar, they did reanimate the entire moveset to fit his 2-armed and his 1-armed version. But Trunks is definitely the main character of this DLC. He's the one you spend the most time playing as, he's the one you developed and progress with. There's a brand new talent tree and new abilities to learn. Some will be familiar and were in the base game, others are definitely new, and all of them can be powered up even further than before. And regarding length and content, it tells the entire Future Trunks arc, starting with Gohan and Trunks running away from the androids, being all sneaky, all the way to him returning from the past, defeating the androids, and then defeating Cell as well. All of these boss fights are pretty cool, by the way. They're brand new boss fights, they didn't recycle them from the base game at all. Some moves may be similar, but the boss fights themselves, they're brand new. You don't don't play the sections where Trunks returns to the past, they're retold in these slideshows, which makes sense since these are sections that you've already played in the base game, with the exception of one little flashback during his training with Vegeta in the hyperbolic time chamber, which has new dialogue and everything. And this whole thing, side quests included, you can beat in around 3 hours. And then it continues. I know, I was surprised too. And look, it was really awesome to see where they took the story next. I was very surprised, so I don't want to spoil it too much. But just so you don't set your expectations too high, no, it is not the Zamasu and Goku Black arc. It's not that. That's not a part of the DLC at all. Which is not to say that it's not something cool. It's not some random filler. In fact, it's very canon. If you've read the Dragon Ball Super manga, you may know what this is all about. If you haven't, then you'll enjoy this DLC even more, because it is an arc that has never been animated in any way until now. In the background footage, I'm not going to be showing you anything that happens after the credits, so here's some filler stuff. But the second arc is not just some throwaway thing that they put there after the credits. It's an arc just as big as the previous one, so it's another 3 hours of gameplay, and it's still chock full of CG cutscenes, new moves for Trunks, new main missions, new side quests, and new boss fights. And that is all I'll say about it. If you thought you were getting the future Trunks arc with the androids, then get ready to double your expectations, because you get 2 full arcs with this DLC. It's a 6-hour DLC in total that doesn't even end once you finish it. Once you are done, you can take this leveled up Trunks into your main game if you want, or you just stay here in this world because Bulma has opened up the training room again. And it's got all the boss fights that you've played so far, but they're all higher level, and this post-game challenge will probably take a few more hours on top of the 6 hours that you've already played in order to beat it. And if you're a completionist like me and you cannot rest until this talent tree is all lit up, then you'll definitely want to beat these bosses again. In a way, it's kind of like the previous DLC. You have the story, but then the real fun begins when you try to beat the highest level Beerus or the highest level Frieza. In this case, I wouldn't say the real fun begins there, because playing through those 6 hours, those 2 arcs, was definitely amazing. Again, largely because of their attention to storytelling, and they really did not cheap out on the CG cutscenes. There are a ton of them. And this time, unlike the previous DLC, it's not just a single boss. It's all the ones that you fought previously, which includes fights from the first arc, the androids and Cell, and the second arc, which we're not going to talk about. Bottom line, folks, if you like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, this DLC is an absolute must-play. If you were on the fence, which is kind of where I was, I gave this game a C because it was alright. If you are like me and have that opinion, then I would still recommend you get this DLC. It has everything that made Kakarot good, and it still has everything that made Kakarot bad. But it has more of the good stuff than it has of the bad stuff. And if you didn't like Kakarot, the base game, this DLC is not going to change your mind. It's still got that same quest design, it's still got those fetch quests, and if you're not a fan of the combat, the whole thing kind of falls apart. But for Kakarot fans, this is getting a hard recommendation from me. Do not skip on the Trunks DLC. You will not regret it. Now, I've streamed the whole thing on Twitch, twitch.tv/Globku, and I've turned my second channel into a VOD channel, so if you're curious and you'd like to watch some more, there's a link to that channel in the description. The whole thing is there, so watch out for spoilers if you still intend on playing it, and it's also a very long video. But if you've already played it yourself, then I would love to know your opinion on this in the comments down below, just so people can see that I'm not alone in this. It's one heck of a DLC. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye!